I have another question that I think it'll be some like real world advice for people working in the industry. And I think this is the closest to not legal advice, but what people's abilities are without legal representation legally is kind of how I would say this. And it's about contracts or agreements in the music industry. So a lot of the times, when somebody goes on tour with somebody as a crew member, they'll sign a contract. Or when a photographer works with somebody, they might present a contract to be signed. Now, my question is, do these contracts that, there's two parts to this question. First of all, when somebody hears contract or agreement, it sounds kind of intimidating. It's like, at least the ones I've received are quite, what I call it, they're definitely written by a lawyer, not by somebody like myself. But if I want to present one to somebody else, does it need to be drafted up by a lawyer? Can it be as simple as just terms I've written out that we both sign?
Well, okay. So a legally enforceable contract requires essentially three things. This is how you form a contract. You make an offer, somebody accepts that offer, and there's a mutual exchange of consideration, both sides getting something out of the deal. So if I offer to buy you a Christmas present, right, and you say, I accept, that's not a contract because that's a gift, right?
Yeah.
But if I say, I'll buy you this present if you mow my lawn, and we accept, that's a mutual exchange of promises. As long as there's no fraud, that we're in the capacity to understand one another, we both know what we're agreeing to, and that we manifest an intent to be legally bound, however that is, whether that's a thumbprint, an X, signing a name, notarized, or a fist bump, a high five, whatever it is, right? Yeah. All of the different levels. There are certain things in the law that are required to be in writing or that need certain things, but those are those exceptions. The general rule, you can have an oral contract, you can have all of the different, hey, sign here in triplicate and initial that, and notarize that, and have a witness and do it in blood. Yeah. That's all evidence. That's just evidence to prove that you actually did agree to those things, right?
Okay, so that makes sense.
I could take a napkin in a cocktail thing. I've actually had a case for an incredibly famous musician one time who was high as a kite backstage at a concert and signed a record deal essentially on a napkin in a loud, smoky club. And then years later tried to put out a record somewhere else. And it was like, whoa, we have this deal here.
Remember that night at the Roxy? We got you.
Right, yeah. I mean, if I sent a piece of paper and said, Adam, I own everything you do. I own your podcast, right? Yeah. And I'll give you $10 and you agree to that, even if it's on the back of a napkin or even if I just say that you agreed to that, it's just a matter of proof whether you really did or not. Now, if you're high or if you didn't understand, or if you're not 18 years old or you're declared incompetent by the court or something, then like you can get out of it. But you see what I mean? Yeah. Anybody can draw up anything. Now, should anybody draw up anything? Should you use a lawyer? For the most part, I obviously am one. So, there's an economic practicality to it all, right? Yeah. I mean, I bill out at, a lot an hour, right? Probably more than most of these people are getting paid in a week on tour, right? So I'm not the guy, but remember back earlier in the conversation where you said, is there free shit that has to get done? Is there, when do you, we talked about how you have to kind of, there's always somebody who's young and hungry and competent, but hasn't proven themselves, or, maybe meet a law student. There's also legal aid clinics. There are, maybe somebody's friend is a lawyer, that kind of thing. If none of those things are available to you, you really can't find someone who's just starting out or someone, there's the internet, I guess, is a good resource. And you can sometimes find some of this stuff, but even more fundamental than that, you could say, I am going to come on tour and you're going to pay me $500 a week. I guess that works, right?
And then you just, as long as you have an agreement where everybody's on the same page. Yeah, because, this question came from Kathy, and basically people are trying to understand, like, when do I need a contract with the people I'm working with? And when is this email enough? When do we need to formally, sign these things to agree on this? And when do you not? Because
it's a risk reward benefit, right? It's a risk tolerance. And like, look, if there's $100 million at stake you might treat it differently than if there's $100 at stake, right?
Yes.
So that's one thing. If you're talking about $5 million and I say it's going to cost 10 grand to get a lawyer to draw this up, who gives a shit? Yeah, draw it up, make sure it's perfect, right?
Yeah.
If I say it's going to cost 10 grand for a lawyer to draw up something for you to sell your pencil for 50 cents or something, no way, right? But there's a lot more, like, contracts are long because there's been problems in the past, right? So when you look at all that boilerplate at the back of a contract that adds in, that's not the basic deal points, but all of the rest of it, that's all piled on there because of, at some point if I said, I'm going to come out on tour for $5,000 a week, right? And then later you say, well, I thought that was a 2-month tour and this is only a 4-week tour. So now you have to pay me for a full 2 months. And we just had a back of an M and there's silence on that, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're a manager, right? You're going to manage my band. Okay, cool. We handshake, right? And you're going to pay. Well, how much of a commission am I going to get paid? Well, you say, well, I thought it was 20%. And the other person says, I thought it was 15. Well, okay. Or maybe we could agree it's going to be 15%, but 15% of what? Are you getting gross on touring? Or are you getting net, right? Hey, what happens if you do a record deal during the term and then you're not the manager anymore? You still get paid, right? Oh, by the way, you agreed you were going to be my manager for my music career, but I didn't think if I was producing records that, or I'm playing I'm doing gigs on the weekends, playing piano at a nightclub. That's not part of the deal. Or by the way, I'm acting or modeling, and all of a sudden the agreement becomes longer and longer. So how important it is to spell all that out and to make sure that all the I's are dotted and D's are crossed should inform. You don't really give a shit, and there's not a lot at stake here. Obviously, we all hope that everything we do, and when I get it, I got to treat it like it's going to be $100 million deal because that's why you're coming to me, is you want it done right.
Well, yeah, it's your job. Well, I don't mean that in a way like this is what you have to do. I mean, it's like it's your job. You take it very passionately. And I'm sure you treat the $100 deal just as much as you treat whatever the $10 million deal because it's your client.
Kind of have to, right?
So I guess to break it down on a very practical level for people who are just wondering what constitutes an agreement with people that they're talking to, you probably an email where you guys agree on something is I know there's also probably you being like, this isn't legal advice or something has to come in here, but that's probably enough for most situations, right? They don't need to have an actual contract. Like you can.
Again, no, I know what you're saying. Yeah. And the answer is it could be, right? And each situation is going to be different, but there are laws about certain things have to be done certain ways, certain things have to be signed, or certain things have to be, an email's not always good enough, but for the most part, sure. And by the way, it's better, it at least memorializes the situation. A lot of times you can show, let's say we didn't have an enforceable contract, but we were arguing about what we agreed to. And I pulled out an email and put it in front of you, where it literally says that you agree to exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. I'm probably going to shut you up, I hope.
Probably ends the conversation right there.
So an email is better. Look, a back of a napkin is better than nothing, but it may not be the best course of action.